Hi everyone, Adam Steele from the Hot Pole Studios here, and today we're talking about the Aston Microphones Origin large diaphragm condenser, and how is it so inexpensive and yet so good for its price? So I already shot this video once, so I'll try not to rush because the data got corrupted and I'm having to do all this again, but here we go. Until the child comes forth and takes you into the clouds. Aston Microphones a few years ago came out of nowhere with the Origin microphone. They now also do the Spirit and the Starlights, and they have a few accessories. They probably have other things in the works, but for now, that's the range. Which I think is kind of cool. They've gone, here's what we do, and we want it to be good, rather than we do 100 different things. I personally think that's the right approach. So, let's talk specifically about the Origin. What is it? It is a large diaphragm condenser microphone, which you see in a lot of studios, and it's generally used for recording things like vocals, although it can also be used for guitar cabinets. You can use them on drums as well, you can use them on bass, you can use them on pretty much anything. And large diaphragm condensers, they have quite a big recording capsule inside them that's also quite delicate, but that means that it can give a sensitivity but also a warmth to the sound, the combination of which lends to a really kind of flattering sound. Now, there are some really great condenser microphones from companies like, say, Neumann. They're probably the best example of one of the most widely regarded companies that make that kind of microphone, but their prices reflect their prestige, as it were. The U87, which if you've ever recorded in any kind of larger studio, you will have probably seen one or heard of it. They cost over £2,000. That is a lot of money for anybody. They do have a great sound to them, sure, but it's just a lot of money. For us mere mortals, as soon as you go down the price bracket, most of the time you get these microphones that are made in China. The parts are a lot cheaper, they're thrown together. So how have Aston managed to make something like this, which has what I consider to be a really great sound, and managed to release it? When it came out, these were £250, which was just under a tenth of the cost of a U87. And now you can get them for £199, which is definitely less than a tenth of the price of something like a U87. To some people, a microphone is a microphone is a microphone. And I partially disagree. I mean, there's the whole ethos of get the sound right at the source, which I never used to be a big believer in, but over time I've come round to that way of thinking, that the less work I have to do afterwards, generally the more natural and yet kind of big and larger than life things can sound. So having a great sounding microphone really is the beginning of a great mic. The beginning of a great sound. You know what I meant. So how have they made this in the UK? It says this on the sticker on the bottom, made in UK, not assembled in UK. This is actually made in England. This is quite impressive. I can see through it that there's a nice big diaphragm. A lot of the cheaper microphones don't have that large a capsule, but they put it in a big housing to make it look more professional, which works for some people. If you literally just need a microphone, sure, you can do that, but if you need it to really sound good, large diaphragm microphones means that the capsule is physically quite big, which also means that there are limitations. It's not the most accurate microphone ever, but that's not the intention of this kind of design. The intention here is to have quite a nice flattering kind of sound. And so that's where, if you look at something like a Neumann U87, where they've got, these really nice metal weaving on the grill, that's quite expensive to do. And so all the cheaper copies, you'll see them with these kind of, here's a cheap Chinese microphone that I have been using for a long time. So this is one of the first microphones that I bought. This is an MXL V67i. I've had this for probably a decade. And the grill on this is kind of finely woven metal. But from what I have discovered over the years, that's one of the more expensive parts of making a microphone. And so as well, the green on here is kind of a professional paint job. Again, that costs money. And by the time you've done all those kind of things, how much money is left for the components inside the microphone? How much money is left to spend the time on making them properly with proper tolerance values and testing them, making sure they sound, not just that they work, but that they sound like they should sound? Because I'll bet anything that you try 10 of these in a row and they'll all sound quite different from each other. Whereas I would bet that I could test 10 of these and they would sound very similar indeed. So where I talked about the Chinese microphone being painted, the Origin is not. From what they said, they put a load of these at a time in a big kind of, it's like a big washing machine full of gravel that kind of polishes the surface in such a way that it's got this almost kind of mottled industrial finish. But because of the way it's done, it's not going to rust or go off. And they can put loads of these bodies in that at the same time, and they get done en masse, which I thought was very clever. Also, instead of the fine grill, they've got kind of a stainless steel, almost a wool, that they've put inside this big spring type thing. And the way they've made that cost effective is that, from what they were saying, they get this big roll of this spring stuff and they just chop, 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 chop. And it was designed to go in cars. It's designed to be part of like a suspension, something or other. So instead of paying however much it is for that fine metal weaving, they get a car part that's really big and they chop it up and throw it on and then put the top on and job done. But that holds the metal kind of wool in, which acts like a secondary pop filter. I personally would still use a pop filter with one of these, but it does seem to go some way to mitigate any really nasty kind of sounds. And one of the benefits of doing it this way is, funny story, the first week that I had this Chinese microphone, the MXL, I had a musician in the studio who was blind, which was cool. But what ended up happening was I put the microphone kind of too close, and then they knocked the mic and it went on the floor and dented all the grill. And I've never been able to get the grill shape back the same way it was. The way that Aston have designed this with this spring, I can now on camera just completely mash and move this all round so that it's completely out of character, and with a little bit of moving around, a little bit of giving it some grief, it's perfectly back how it was. So if you've got a musician in your studio who's been a bit boisterous and ends up getting knocked, apparently, from what I've found it is true, you can just put it straight back. That's a big plus. This microphone is heavier than that Chinese one as well. There's some serious weight to it. Now, again, asking the questions of where else they've cut the costs that don't matter to me. So, this is the box that Chinese microphone came in. It's a wooden box, or at least it's laminated wood. It's got this blue velvet in, and it's all very pretty. It's all rather nice. Nice. I can't hear that blue velvet on a recording, though. So, as soon as that mic's up on a stand, that's where it counts for me, whereas Aston, they ship their microphones in a cardboard box with cardboard on the outside, and so it's nice and affordable, and it's got the foam lining inside, and a couple of little goodies come with it, a couple of stickers, but generally that's where they save money again, because the way that I've always seen it with good microphones, unless it's like multi-thousand-pound piece that you want to really keep sacred, you don't use the box very much, and the box, like I said, doesn't affect the sound. So by them saving money on that bit, which gets it to you safely, and then you put it on the stand, and if you've done the microphone right, you never take it off the stand again, then hey, job done. Another thing is the MXL mic and most of the Chinese mics. It came with a cheap shock mount, which has since died. It disintegrated, and it attached with kind of a proprietary ring system. The Aston mounts with a screw thread like you find on a mic stand that's directly drilled into the body of it. And that means that that's there. That's never going to fall off. It's never going to break because it's part of the metal. And also the XLR mount on the bottom is drilled into the metal, which makes manufacturing, as far as I can see, easier. Easier means less expensive. Not necessarily cheap, just doesn't cost them as much, and I'm all for it. The mic's held together with some serious looking Allen hex bolts, which means it's not going to fall apart anytime soon. I've already been quite kind of rough with this microphone, and I'm not like using it like a baseball rough, but I mean, hey, I'm throwing it around, and I'm not afraid of doing that with this because it's designed to be getting some serious use. Everything inside is solid state, and from what I can gather, it's all wired properly, so it's not going to just break. And I mean, yes, me doing that and throwing it around seems a little bit irresponsible, I'll give you that, but I'm kind of replicating some of the busier studio sessions where someone might knock a microphone or tap the mic, or if over 6 months of heavy use, you know, that kind of usage is going to build up. And I've seen like U87s go onto the floor. I've never done it myself, but I've seen them go over, and well-built microphones just get back up and get dusted off and carry on. And the funny thing is, something like, say, a Shure SM58, for instance, they're built like tanks. People drop them all the time. In fact, part of my intro to the video is me dropping an SM58, and I have no qualms with that. I'll pick it up, I'll carry on. And whilst this may not be quite that level of durability, I would not be surprised if this ended up in some kind of accident and you just dusted it off and carried on. Now, it's got a couple of switches on here. It's got a 10 dB pad, which is great for really noisy sources. I personally found, you'll have seen this microphone in some of the vocal videos that I've done over the past few months, and I'll reference them in a second. But if I'm absolutely blasting a note out at this thing, I was finding that with the 0 dB, it sounded like it was kind of distorting inside the microphone, even though the levels weren't clipping going into the preamps. As soon as I put the minus 10 dB pad on and just made up the gain on the preamp, that stopped the circuitry inside from overloading and everything was crystal clear. The low cut that's on the side as well, I don't tend to use low cuts, high pass filters on microphones unless I really have to. I try wherever possible to do that after the preamp in the software, especially with super clean preamps. If I'm using like a vintage Neve preamp or something like that, I know that low end rumble can affect the harmonics of the preamp, so I might cut that out. But I try not to use them. But I have found with this, it's relatively natural, where some of the filters that I've used, especially on the cheaper microphones, suddenly sounds like you're singing through a tin can. Now, enough talking about this thing. You'll have seen a little demo right at the very beginning of this video for the people who are like, oh, less talking, more action. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to talk about this thing because this is a review. If I don't review this thing and I just make noises through it, you're not going to know why you should buy it or not buy it. That's an aside, and let's talk about that in another video maybe. But yes, I'm now going to do a quick vocal piece into this. I'm going to give it a bit of soft, and I'm going to absolutely blast it. In fact, I'm going to pull that from the video I made, which was using all the different rooms in the studio. I'm going to use the clip from the vocal booth there and just isolate the vocal. First with no compression, and then with kind of a production chain I would use, just a bit of light EQ, quite heavy compression, which is how I like to use a vocal mic. In time, in life, we seek a new way. In time, in life, we seek a new way. In lies, in truth, the self is bound to stay. Sounds pretty decent to me, and especially in that context of that mix there. It sits quite nicely, which is what you want out of a good microphone. Now, also, here's a bit of a clip of this on a heavy distorted guitar amp. It may not be the SM57 sound that a lot of people are used to, but it still sounds decent to me. So I'm going to do an SM57, the Origin, and then both together with the Origin kind of closer to the center of the speaker cone so that you can get the two blended as a bit of a rough idea of how that works. You can also hear the Origin on the Orange 4-stroke demo that I did, where that was on a 4x10 bass cab. Check this out. And I also used this with the 10 dB pad as an outside kick microphone on the drum videos that I was doing recently. So check this out, where you'll hear the inside mic, then the Origin, then them blended together. All in all, a very versatile microphone, unlike something like a Shure SM57 or a 58, which is fairly indestructible but very much has a sonic character to it that's hard to get away from. The Origin is fairly clean, fairly rich sounding, but not with too much character where you end up going, it just sounds like that microphone and I can't change it. It's relatively, well, clear sounding to me. It doesn't sound too harsh, doesn't sound too bright, it doesn't sound too kind of, it's not got like an upper mid honk or anything, and it seems to lend itself very clearly to studio applications. So I'm seriously considering getting a second of these and using them as stereo pairs. Talking of stereo pairs, coming up very soon, I'm going to be talking about the Aston Starlight microphones, which are their small diaphragm condensers that came out much more recently. Now, those are a serious workhorse in some very different applications. When you want kind of reality and clarity, those are definitely your go-to there. They're a little more expensive, but they have so many knobs and switches because they do a lot of cool stuff that I'm going to save them for their own separate video. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. Stick around for the Aston Starlight review, as well as the Audient ID22 and 44 videos that are coming out. There's a lot more coming out as well. There's going to be the La Preamp videos over on Two Notes' own channel, which I've done for them. And I just wanted to say thank you to all our patrons on Patreon who help to support the channel, because that really helps us to take more time out of the studio to do this kind of work. We really like doing this kind of stuff, and we're fast approaching, at time of filming this, 12,000 subscribers, which a while ago was an absolute pipe dream. So here's to the next milestone. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.